So I just filmed an analysis of property in Reeves County. It was a property that one of y'all proposed I look at. I put out there in a live video that I wanted to start doing analysis on a public forum. You know, most of the stuff I do is for private clients and it's private information, and I'm not going to share y'all's private information. But if y'all give me permission to share it, then I would love to, because I think that it's a great learning experience to see what I go through and see what I'm looking at and share that with y'all. That's what this video is today. When I recorded it, it ended up being over 2 hours. And so y'all will see the little clock, that side, this little clock over here. That's what time it is when I'm recording. And I went way long. And so instead of putting out a 2-hour video, I'm going to put out a couple smaller videos into little chunks. And so there'll probably be a several part series on this. Editing Tracy has a long road ahead of her. Hi, my name is Tracy Lenz, and I'm the owner of PECAN Tree Oil Gas and a petroleum engineer. I have a master's and an undergrad in petroleum engineering, and I'm also a certified mineral appraiser. I'm here to explain all that I can to the public, because I think that there's a great disconnect between public knowledge and private business knowledge. And I really want to solve that and provide a method for y'all to learn if you are willing to learn. One of the viewers of the last live stream volunteered their minerals and provided all of their research, showed me what they had so far. And they did a phenomenal job gathering the research together. Great job. The name we're going to use for this mineral owner is Sunshine Partners. It's in Reeves County, Texas, which is in the Permian Basin. Also, I'm getting over a cold. I apologize if my voice is a little croaky. I'm going to try to keep that from happening. Eventually, I'd like to do these more of a live, once a week, just have someone volunteer the minerals. I can poke around on it. But since this is my first time doing it on a public forum, I wanted to make sure I didn't accidentally give out something like private information for that owner. If you would like me to do this for your minerals, please send me an email. Contact info is below. Okay, so we're looking at a map of the United States, and shaded here are the main oil and gas plays. Places where there's this gray, every gray dot / line is a well, and then the red and green are where oil and gas is typically found in fields these days. We are looking at, we're going to be zooming into this is West Texas, and it's the Permian Basin. And of the West Texas Permian Basin, we're going to be looking at the Reeves County, Delaware side of things. We'll zoom back out. We'll look at this. So here's this whole basin here is the Permian Basin. And on the right, you have the Midland Basin. In the middle, you have the Central Basin platform. And then on the left, you have the Delaware Basin. Now, these were called this way because they were literally basins of water and a platform in the middle of these two basins of water. And it was this beautiful, lush reef that would probably be good to snorkel and vacation at back in the day, hundreds of thousands of years ago, millions of years ago. I'm not a geologist. I don't have those things memorized, but a long time ago, you had this platform in the middle where all of the organisms were building. And then once those organisms died, they would kind of run off the platform into the basins. And then, anytime a storm would come, anytime a rock broke down into dust and became sediment, what do geologists call the little thing? Clay. As you had the sediments break down, they would go further and further down into the basins as gravity slowly pulled those particles down. So you ended up getting the finest grains in the middle of the basin on either side. So these are both the basins. And then you got the more dense grains along the edges because that was closest to where the source was. It sounded like if you have a mountain and then a river, and then the river deposits all the big chunks and boulders and stuff at the base of the mountain, but then it carries on the little particles further out. The further you get from where things are coming from, the finer the particles get. So that's what's happening here. And then over time, things are just piling up. And that's where we are today. We have these massive sedimentary basins. And then that water was a salty water. And so at some point when that water evaporated, it left this giant stack of salt on top of everything. Across the entire Permian Basin, there's like 1,000-foot salt layer called the Salado, however you want to pronounce it. But that salt layer covers everything and created a nice seal. Because when salt, if you think of what a salt looks like, right? Salt looks like a crystal, which is very close to glass when you think about it, right? if you're trying to trap oil and gas in a place, ideally you'd want to put you're thinking if you're wanting to trap your grandma's casserole and not have all the nice flavors escape into the fridge, you put a piece of plastic over it, right? Or you put a glass container on top of it. That's basically what happened here. So when that water evaporated and left that layer of salt, that was the glass container cap on top of what is the Permian Basin oil. So everything stayed there. So that's the basics of why there's so much oil in the Permian Basin. There was a lot of rich organic matter that grew and multiplied and continued to multiply, and then it all got stuck there. There's a lot of organic matter underground that's preserved by that salt layer. There's a lot more that goes into it. That's already more than I needed to go into, but here we are. So this star here is the property that we're going to be looking at. As you can see, it's kind of smack dab in the middle of the Delaware Basin. That's why I'm excited to look at this, because I really enjoy looking at these areas of high activity. It's just fun to see all that's going on and how much activity is happening in one place, and all the layers of complexity that goes into that is just fascinating to me. That's why I like what I do, because I get to look at this all across the country. So it's really fun to be a nerd. Okay, so if I zoom in to this area, every gray line here is a well, but at this point it's getting a little hard to see, so we will switch to a slightly different view. I'll put out a more detailed video later on how to locate your own minerals. I know that's been a difficulty and request that I've received, but for now I'm just going to make it to where we can look at this one, and I'll walk you through how we find it. So if we're looking at the legal description that is provided on a deed or in a recording or a probate or somewhere, you probably have seen something that looks like this if you have minerals of your own. Sometimes it's a lot simpler. Sometimes it's 30 pages of description. And I am sorry, meets and bounds folks in East Texas, we will cover that one at one point, because that's a pain, but we'll get to that. This is, there's different types of ways to identify where something is. So this is considered, we are in Texas. So Texas is not a public land survey system state. And so we're kind of at the mercy of whatever happens to be happening at that area. For this part of Texas, it's broken up into a survey, and then that survey is broken up into blocks, and then that block broken up into sections, and then it identifies where you are in that section. If we switch back to the map, just to show you that this is the H&GN-RR survey. So what that means is the H&GN is the name of the survey. RR stands for Railroad Survey. And all of this stuff happened long time when Texas was being established, and multiple surveys were done by different people. So my husband's a surveyor, and he's probably going to watch this part and be like, Tracy, I will get better at this. So the H&GN survey is basically like an index saying, like, if you're going to look at a map, go to this map first. And then in that survey, go to block 2. So we have these different surveys. If we zoom out, just to make sure we're all playing along together, we have the county, which is this outline here. This is Reeves County. And then as we zoom in, you see these bigger blocks show up. And these bigger blocks is kind of a combination of survey and block. And you see these like 55 T5S. That is where you're starting to get to the block name and more how things are referred. So here is the H&GN survey that kind of snakes along the river here. And we want to look for block 2. So I'm going to turn on the blocks now, and we can see we have some divisions of that survey happening. So we have 4, 3, 13, 2, 1. Sometimes these numbers end up getting funky because of things overlapping, but we'll just know that we are in block 2 here. And so I already have it highlighted so you can cheat and already know where we're going. But if I turn on the sections, then now we can see that this block is further subdivided into sections. And sometimes a section is called something different. Sometimes it's leagues and labors. Sometimes it doesn't have a section at all. It's just an abstract, or it's only a block, or it's Texas is weird, but here we have sections. So we're going to go down to section 30, which if I zoom to where my numbers are. So now we have our section 30. We're in the right county, we're in the right survey, we're in the right block, and we're in the right section. What the heck is this SW/4 of SE/4 thing? Because that's actually telling us where we are in that section. It's not as hard as it initially looks. Initially, it looks like a bunch of random letters, but it's not as hard as it looks, I promise. Let's walk through it real quick. So what this is saying, if I read it in plain text, is the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter. So sometimes it helps to read it backwards. So we're looking at the southeast quarter of the section, and we're in the southwest quarter of that southeast quarter, right? So if we were to draw it on a map, which we will, we'll go in, and I know that this is way basic for some of y'all, but also hopefully helpful for others. Okay, so this is our section, and we're wanting to look at the southeast quarter. Okay, we're going to break it into quarters, right? What just happened there? We're going to break it into quarters. This is very rough. Imagine this being a perfect straight line, breaking it up into exact quarters. If we are in the southeast quarter, you might be looking at this going, well, do I turn my head this way or do I turn my head this way? Which way is, like, north is this corner right here. How do I know which one's the southeast quarter? The appraisal district has a map of all the properties. It's based off of the surface, not the minerals, but sometimes you can look at the legal description and it will say like southeast quarter, and you can see like on a map where that southeast quarter is, and then that will help you know if it's like which way is considered south. Now, if you can find that survey and it will show you which way is considered north for that survey, that's ultimately what is going off of. But for this particular, we aren't going to go into that detail because Sunshine Partners did that for us. And so this is the southeast quarter. So southeast. Now, if we zoom into this a little more, and I clear my board. So then we're looking at just the southeast quarter. So of that southeast quarter, you break it up into quarters again. And it's saying we're in the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter. So southwest, that's this one. And so that's how we got to that conclusion that it's the southwest quarter here. The legal description says it's 39.6 acres, being all the southwest quarter, the southeast quarter, which we just found, and now this is where we start and get, both of these are considered the legal description. Sometimes they'll use the simpler legal description, and sometimes they get all fancy talking about the lots and the details and where it's recorded and the plats. That's very useful for being able to find the specifics, because if typically a quarter of a quarter section is 40 acres, but this is a 39.6 acre plot because there's more specifics going into the legal description. And we won't go into all of that detail today, but just know that all this describes that 0.4 of the acre, like what happened to that 0.4 acres that normally is in a quarter of a quarter. Okay, so the next thing to look at is what activity is happening around here. So I'm going to switch to a map that has all the wells, and we can look at the wells together.